What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Wave MTG, a channel dedicated to exploring power levels in EDH and helping you tune your deck to your meta. I'm your host Jacob, and today we're going to be checking out Prosper Tome-Bound, and I wanted to challenge myself a little bit, so today we're going to be doing a budget version of Prosper. We're going to start at $50, and then as we move up in tiers, we'll spend about $70 on these upgrades, and that means that our cEDH version of Prosper is just shy of about $200. Prosper is a 4-mana Rakdos creature with, at the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. And whenever you play a card from exile, create a treasure token. So very powerful in terms of Rakdos commanders, just because he both provides card advantage and at the same time provides ramp. As usual, the deck lists are in the description below. Let's go ahead and get started. The Skirmish version of Prosper is going to be pretty straightforward. If you look at our creatures here, we're just trying to exile stuff and cast it. We got Tectonic Giant, Magmatic Channeler. Atali is really great for casting our opponent's spells, getting a bunch of treasure off that. We got Flame Skull, Author of Shadows, Abraya's Apprentice, and then a few ways for us to win the game with those extra treasures like Nadir's Nightblade and the Marionette Master. Just as a few other good cards, Inferno Titan, only $1.50, but this card can definitely do a ton of work if left unchecked. And then we've got the Florian, Voldaren Scion, just a extra card advantage. And Zorn is really great in a deck like this. You're getting 2 treasures instead of the 1 treasures whenever you're casting spells with Prosper. When we get to the sorceries, you'll notice that we've actually got a few ways to generate card advantage, like Cathartic Reunion, Ignite the Future, Pirate's Pillage, Seize the Spoils, and even though Prosper does give us that extra card advantage just in the command zone, we don't want to always lean on it being out. It'll get removed, even if it's like someone targeting it or if there's a board wipe. We just want to make sure we have more ways in our deck to generate card advantage in case we don't have our commander. Reckless Impulse, also a really great card. Exiles the cards as well, so extra synergy with Prosper. And then we've got Chain Reaction and Yahenni's Expertise, just as ways to remove the board. And some big boys like the Fevered Suspicion, which more or less does what Atali does. So each opponent exiles cards from top of their library until they exile an online card. And then you can cast the spells that are revealed this way. So unlike the Atali where you're not guaranteed, you can probably hit a land or something with the Atali. Fevered Suspicion is always going to hit, and it has Rebound. So if you cast it from exile with Rebound, so if Prosper get that extra treasure, which is really nice. Then Apex of Power is just a fun card. We're going to exile top 7 and get a bunch of mana after we do that. And then Cut to Ribbons. This card is kind of bonkers. So cut, deal 4 damage to target creature. And then the aftermath is 2 black and an X, and each opponent loses X life. So basically in Exsanguinate, you don't gain the life, but at 69 cents, this card's actually kind of great. It can serve as removal in the early game, and then a finisher in the late game. Very, very strong card. The instants are pretty chill for the most part. Just got some removal. Abrade, you find some prisoners, terminate, Augur Spree. You could use this to help pump a creature if it's swinging at someone else, like a commander, and surprise kill people with this, or just use it as removal. Commune with Lava, really great card. Huge card advantage. It exiles the card, so as you cast them, you get the treasures with Prosper. And it's an instant, so at the end of the turn before yours, dump a whole bunch of mana into it, and then you get to untap and just have essentially a whole new hand. So very strong card. Hero's Downfall, Poison the Cup, Rakdos Charm, then some extra card draw like Thrill Possibility and Unexpected Windfall. Moving on to the enchantments, Hedonist Trove, great way to hit our opponent's graveyard, and then basically just play stuff that they've been playing all game. Get those extra treasures off Prosper, really cool card. We've got Outpost Siege, Theater of Horrors, Vance's Blasting Station, and Valakut Exploration as a way to generate more card advantage by exiling cards from the top of our library. And then we've got Gyro per Aether Grid. Tap 2 untapped artifacts you control. Gyro per Aether Grid deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So a fun way to kind of ping the table and possibly close out the game once we're getting a ton of treasures and we don't know what to do with them anymore. And finally, for the Skirmish deck, we're at our lands. Since we want to be budget, lands are gonna take the biggest hit here, unfortunately. We got a good bit of enters the battlefield tap lands that also serve as dual lands, help us color fix a little bit, but a good bit of basics, and we're just keeping watch of our mana symbols here, kind of figure out how many basics that we need for the deck. And moving on to the battle version of Prosper. And so we've actually added Chandra, Torture Defiance. Really great card overall. Generates the card advantage by exiling top card and we can play it. You can add 2 mana, deal damage, and the ult. Whenever you cast a spell, you deal 5 damage to any target. So if you do happen to get this one off, it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Moving on to our creatures. So we've added a couple more oomph creatures to our deck. Magmatic Force, really great way to finish out the game. We're keeping the Inferno Titan and the Atali, both are great for generating card advantage and just kind of controlling the board. Then we've added a Sire of Insanity, and Prosper generates card advantage by exiling the card. So if we have a Sire and we're forcing everyone to discard, we're still going to be able to break parity on the discard because our spell will be in exile. Then we've also added a little bit of combo in here. So we've got a Metallic Mimic as well as a Murderous Redcap or a Lesser Manticore. And so how this works is you have your Metallic Mimic enter and you choose a creature type. You're either going to choose Goblin or Masticore, whichever one you need in the given situation. And then with a sacrifice outlet like a Viscera Seer, we'll sacrifice one of the creatures with Persist, and it will re-enter the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. But because of the Metallic Mimic, it will also enter with a +1/+1 counter, and those counters will basically cancel each other out, and then you can continue to sacrifice the creature over and over and over again. In the case of Murderous Redcap, we don't need another card because it itself will deal damage to any target equal to its power when it enters the battlefield. With the Lesser Masticore, it does not have the same thing going for it, so we've actually, funny enough, a lot of the cards from our previous deck are still useful in this context as well. So we've got Disciple of the Vault and Mayhem Devil will both serve as outlets in terms of this combo. So we'll move on to the sorceries, and for the most part, it's pretty much the same. We've added a little bit more card advantage with our Read the Bones, reanimation spell with Persist. I've also thrown in a Tutor. Dark Petition is really great. Vandal Blast to destroy all the artifacts on the field. And an Awaken the Erstwhile. So much like we're doing with the Sire, Awaken makes all the players discard the cards in their hand, and each player gets a 2/2 black zombie for each card they discarded this way. And again, because we're going to be getting that extra card advantage off of Prosper, forcing all of our opponents to discard and taking advantage of that is really strong. So the incense are pretty much following in the same vein. We're cleaning up some of the higher CMC stuff for some cheaper removal like Infernal Grasp, Tragic Slip. Chaos Warp is oddly enough $4, but it can take care of any permanent on the battlefield, so very strong. And we're also changing out some of our draw spells, like adding in the Deadly Dispute instead of the 4-mana draw spells that we were doing before. And once we get to the artifacts, even though we are still doing the same thing by reducing our costs, it matters even more so. Ramping on 2 is pretty important in Prosper decks, mainly because Prosper is 4 mana. So if we're going to think about our general game plan, we want to do some kind of ramping on turn 2, and then turn 3 we're going to play our Prosper, because then we'll have 4 mana, ideally on turn 3 once we cast the Mana Rock on turn 2. So 2 is a really strong mana value for our rocks to be at. And as you can see here, most of our ramp, pretty much all of it at this point, is going to be sitting on that 2, except for Gilded Lotus. Then we've got the Wishclaw Talisman. just a really great tutor, and Bolas Citadel to help us grind out that card advantage. Very strong card. Moving on to our instance, we've got Goblin Bombardment as an additional win con for the Massacre or Murderous Redcap combo that we were talking about earlier. And Sunbird's Invocation, this card will just, it will win you the game. If you resolve this card and no one responds to it, it's going to be very, very hard to stop you once you cast a few spells. You're just going to generate a crazy amount of value with this spell. Very, very, really strong. So the lands, we're not really doing too much upgrade in this version. I wanted most of the upgrades to go towards the finishers and the efficiency of our spells. And since we're increasing the efficiency of our spells, it's okay for our lands sometimes to enter tapped, especially since our ramp is a little more efficient. I think I added the Exotic Orchard and Ashen Barrens. They can both enter untapped, and Ashen Barrens can help us mana fix a little bit. Before we move on to the Glory Bearers and a Prosper, if you think this content is cool, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment below letting me know what commander you'd like me to do next. Or if you just want to see more budget decks like this. Had a lot of fun doing it, so hope you like it. Alright, so gonna check out the Glory version of Prosper now. And obviously, as you add more Planeswalkers to your deck, obviously the deck gets better. Not necessarily all the time, but Chandra's still a fantastic include here. Checks all the boxes as far as things we want from a Planeswalker. And we've also added Professor Onyx, and that is an extra win con because of the Magecraft ability. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. And that's going to be a part of our Chain of Smog combo that we have added to the deck. And moving on to our creatures, so our change is going to be pretty drastic, and as we move from more of a casual deck building strategy to more of a competitive deck building strategy, we want to kind of ask ourselves, what are we doing with the deck, and does more or less everything that we're doing help us reach that goal? And in cEDH, our primary goal is to stop our opponents from comboing and get our combo off ourselves. And we've got a few combos here, and they're not as convoluted as the combo that we saw before with the Lesser Masticore. So we've got the Zealous Conscripts with Splinter Twin. We've also got the Professor Onyx, of course, with the Chain of Smog, and Stormkiln Artist as can also be an outlet with the Chain of Smog, because we will make infinite treasures. And with those infinite treasures, we can kill the table with the Mayhem Devil or the Disciple of the Vault. So, and especially since we have less tutors to our disposal because we don't have the money to kind of shell on that, we want our combos to be nice and compact and easy to assemble. So then we've got Magda, a really great way to do some tutoring with the extra treasures. Once we make a bunch, Stormkiln Artist, Runaway Steamkin, kind of in the same vein as the Stormkiln Artist here. And everything else is pretty much just trying to ramp us, like the Basalt Thrall, Blood Pet, Simian Spirit Guide, Skirk Prospector, just to help us get our commander and our win cons out as fast as possible. Help us keep up with the other players that are going to be dropping their 0 mana ramp spells and stuff like that. We're going to check out the sorceries here, and we've still got some of the card advantage stuff that we were using from previous, like Reckless Impulse, Spark of Creativity, Light Up the Stage, and then we've added a couple of crazy stuff, like Peer into the Abyss is only 59 cents, but this card is really good. Draw half your deck and lose half your life. A really, really strong card. Cut to Ribbons, another outlet for the Stormkiln Artist, and also it hits a lot. Very few things actually have 4 toughness, but in case you need to kill like a Winota or something like this, Cut can definitely come in handy. Feed the Swarm, help us kill off the enchantments that we don't want to see, like Rest in Peace, or some of the ones that force our artifacts to come in tapped. And Heat Shimmer and Twin Flame is a very compact combo with Dualcaster Mage, as described in the Feather video that I have previously done. The instant package is more or less the same kind of stuff. The big difference here is we've added some rituals: Desperate Ritual, Heretic Ritual, um, Cabal Ritual, Dark Ritual. And these, since we don't have access to the super fast ramp, we're going to take all the rituals we can get. They're on the cheaper side, and they're going to help us power out our spells like Peer into the Abyss, and we've also added Adnaz. So Adnaz, it's only like $11. That's really good. It's one of the more powerful cards in the cEDH format. You resolve this card, and 80 to 90% of the time you're going to be winning the game off of this. So hey, throw it in. Really great card. Check out our artifacts here, and again, we're keeping it as cheap as we can get it. We got the 2 mana rocks. Did a little bit of upgrading, adding like an arcane signet and talisman of indulgence. And the jeweled amulet is a 0 mana rock. Unfortunately, you do have to pay a mana into it to put a counter on it, and then you can tap it later to remove a counter to add 1 mana of the type of mana that you put into it. But still, we'll take our cheap ramp where we can get it. And then we've got the Splinter Twin, again, as a combo with the Zealous Conscripts. Pretty straightforward there. Then we'll move on to our lands, and added a little bit of utility here, and in cEDH, we really want our lands to be entering untapped. Unfortunately, that does mean we kind of have to up the basics a little bit here. If you have like an extra Blood Moon sitting around, you could probably warrant throwing one of them in here. Crystal Vein, nice way for us to get some extra ramp. Either add 1, or you can tap it, sack it to add 2 colors to your mana instead. And we've also added Blast Zone and Scavenging Grounds in case we need to interact with our opponents at all. And to wrap it all together, as we move up in power levels, you want your win cons to be more compact. And we also want to get our CMC as low as possible. We don't want to just be reducing CMC just for the sake of it. But in terms of the early game becomes more important as you move up, especially once you hit the cEDH kind of level. So the more higher costed stuff you have in your deck, the more often your hand is going to get muddied up with a bunch of high CMC stuff. So as you can see here, we're moving up in power levels. Move to the Skirmish of the Battle, you see that it's kind of leveled off a little bit. More stuff in the lower end of the range, and then once we move up to Glory, we got a ton of stuff in our 2 and 1 mana range, and all that stuff is gonna help us get to our win cons and our goal much faster. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Opal Wave MTG. Again, I'm your host Jacob, and until next time.